You know, every single second of every day, whether you're awake or asleep, a silent, microscopic war is being fought inside your body. You are, in essence, a fortress, and you are under constant siege from this endless army of invaders. So let's pull back the curtain and take a look at the absolutely incredible defense network that's keeping you alive right now.
And look, this isn't just some clever metaphor, it's the strategic reality of our own biology. Survival really does depend on this highly coordinated, almost military-style operation. So in this explainer, we're going to break down exactly how this network identifies the enemy, how it mobilizes for war, and, ultimately, how it restores the peace.
So what's the #1 challenge for this entire defense system? Well, it all boils down to solving one critical problem. How do you tell the difference between self, your own healthy cells, and non-self, the invaders that are there to cause harm? Everything else depends on getting that right.
To fight this war, your body uses this two-pronged strategy. Just take a look at the timeline here. That red line, that's your innate immunity. It's immediate, it's pretty non-specific, and it hits hard right away, usually within the first 12 hours. Think of it as the frontline infantry just holding the line. Because in the meantime, that blue line, the adaptive immunity, is slowly coming online. It's way more delayed, yeah, but that's because it's busy engineering custom weapons for a really decisive targeted strike.
And this really highlights the trade-off, doesn't it? Innate immunity is all about one thing: speed. They're the generalist first responders. Adaptive immunity, on the other hand, is all about precision and memory. It's slower to get going, for sure, but it builds these highly specialized weapons and, this is the crucial part, it remembers the enemy, so it's ready for the next encounter. Now, of course, every army needs its bases, and this diagram maps them out perfectly. The primary organs, that's your bone marrow and your thymus, they're basically the factories and the boot camps where our soldiers are produced and trained. Then you have the secondary organs, like your lymph nodes and the spleen. Think of these as the forward operating bases and command posts out in the field, where intelligence is gathered and the actual battles are coordinated.
Okay, so our story begins. A breach. The outer walls have been compromised. Maybe it's a splinter, a paper cut, or some pathogen that got past the first barriers. The alarm bells are about to start ringing. This image just illustrates that breach protocol perfectly. An invader gets in, sentinel cells called macrophages spot it and immediately sound the alarm. This triggers a vascular response. Your blood vessels literally get wider to let reinforcements rush through. And that's why a cut gets red, hot, and swollen. That's not the infection. That's the army mobilizing for war. And that brings us to a really, really critical distinction. We all think inflammation is the bad guy, right? But it's not the enemy. It's the flashing red light, it's the siren, it's the flare being shot into the sky to tell the rest of the body that the fight is on, right here, right now. So who answers that call first? Well, it's the soldiers from the myeloid lineage. You've got your neutrophils. These are the high-volume, short-lived kamikaze infantry. Then you have the macrophages, the big eaters, that act as both sentinels and the battlefield cleanup crew. And then you've got the dendritic cells, and these guys are the crucial intelligence officers who gather intel from the front lines.
But here's the thing. These frontline troops, as tough as they are, they can't win the war by themselves. They have to get a message to high command and call in the special forces. So, how do they coordinate all this chaos? Communication. It's absolutely key. The army uses these chemical messengers called cytokines, which act like radio signals to coordinate the attack and call for more troops. At the exact same time, this automated defense grid called the complement system kicks in, setting off a chain reaction of protein booby traps that can either punch holes directly into bacteria or just tag them for destruction.
Okay, this right here, this might be the single most important moment in the entire war. Remember that dendritic cell, our intelligence officer. It's captured a piece of the enemy, a fragment. It then travels all the way to a command post, like a lymph node, and it presents that fragment, called an antigen, to a T cell. It is literally showing high command a mugshot of the invader. And with that critical piece of intel, it's finally time. Time to unleash the adaptive immune system's elite special forces. These are the cells that are about to turn the tide of this entire battle.
So let's go back to our roster and look at the other side of the family tree, the elite units. While the myeloid lineage gave us our frontline grunts, the lymphoid lineage provides the command and the heavy artillery. This is where we find the T cells, our battlefield commanders and assassins, and the B cells, our specialized weapon factories, ready to just flood the zone with custom-built antibodies. But hang on, how do you create an assassin that you know won't turn on its own country? Well, you put it through an absolutely brutal training academy. This is the thymus education process. T cells are run through multiple checkpoints. First, can they recognize the enemy? And second, and this is the most important part, will they attack self? If they fail either one of those tests, they're eliminated on the spot, no exceptions. So what do you think the graduation rate is from this elite academy? Get this, a staggering 2%. Out of every 100 T-cell cadets that enter training, only 2 are considered effective enough and, more importantly, safe enough to graduate. The other 98 are destroyed. The selectivity of this system is it's almost unbelievable.
The few who do graduate have very distinct roles. You've got the CD4+ helper T-cells, which are basically the generals who coordinate the entire battle plan and activate other immune cells. And then you have the CD8+ cytotoxic T-cells. These are the assassins, and their job is to hunt down your own infected cells and order them to self-destruct.
Now, once they get the order from a T-cell general, the B cells kick off a process called clonal expansion. The best way to think about it is they just hit the copy-paste button a million times. A single B cell rapidly multiplies into an entire army of plasma cells, and each one of those becomes a factory, just churning out millions of highly specific antibodies. It is a massive, custom-built artillery barrage designed to swamp and neutralize the invader.
And this right here just brilliantly shows you the tactical flexibility. For something like bacteria just floating around outside your cells, the antibodies act like tags, marking them to be eaten by macrophages. Simple. But for a virus that's hiding inside one of our own cells, well, you can't reach it. So instead, the T-cell assassins are sent in to take out the compromised cell itself. 2 totally different threats, 2 perfectly tailored solutions.
So the battle is won. The invader is cleared out. But the war isn't over, not by a long shot. What happens next is what defines our long-term health.
This is the true genius of the system. It has a memory. This graph shows it all. The first time you're exposed, you get that slow primary response we talked about. But some of those T and B cells stick around as memory cells. So the second time you see that same enemy, the response is exponentially faster and stronger. And that, right there, is the entire principle behind vaccination. A vaccine is basically a training simulation, a war game for your immune army.
But sometimes this incredibly powerful system can fail, and fail catastrophically. In autoimmunity, it's a tragic case of friendly fire. Those T cells that should have been eliminated in training somehow get through and attack the fortress itself, causing diseases like type 1 diabetes. And in immunodeficiency, well, the fortress gate is just left wide open, often because of genetic defects or viruses like HIV that specifically target our T cell generals, crippling the entire chain of command.
And then sometimes the army's response is just way too strong, and it causes a lot of collateral damage. We call this hypersensitivity. You know, an overzealous artillery barrage against a totally harmless substance like pollen, that's what gives you allergies. A delayed special forces operation against an oil from a plant, that's the rash you get from poison ivy. The response itself becomes the problem.
And really, it all comes back to this one core tension. Your health is this incredibly delicate balancing act. The entire system is designed to be aggressive enough to kill the alien, but at the same time, tolerant enough to spare the self. And when things go wrong, it's almost always because that crucial balance has been tipped one way or the other.
Which really leaves us with one final big question. As we get better and better at manipulating the system, dialing it up with immunotherapy to fight cancer or dialing it down to allow for organ transplants, we have to ask ourselves, in this ongoing, complex, internal war for our own health, what is the next frontier?